How you doing, bruh?
Very well. All things considered,
Of course.
was out last night filming at the George Floyd solidarity rally here in Montreal. Thousands of people. A lot of catharsis, a lot of anger, a lot of beauty, a
Hmm.
lot of things. How about you, man?
Yeah. I've been alright, man. I've had a ton of conversations about George Floyd, frankly. I'd say 7 conversations from all different walks of life, just trying to hear what people are thinking at the time. And it's pretty interesting, man. I don't know, for me, these difficult conversations are just where it's at. I just want more difficult conversations, better, difficult conversations.
Because because difficult conversations like help eventually bridge gaps, because eventually you're closing the space, you're talking to somebody with whom you have a gap, and if you do that difficult conversation correctly, the two of you might end up closer together. Is that the
Yeah, I think that we are all experiencing the world through our lenses, and our lenses are all subjective and limited, and that's just a feature of humanity. And the only way to bridge that gap is through a good conversation. I think there are people out there who truly believe that they don't have any ill will or ill racial animus inside of them, and they purely haven't had to deal with some of the difficulties and had to really sit down and think about their society and what kinds of things go on. I struggled with watching the video for a long time because, to me, the ugly side of policing is really, it's clear already to me. I already know it. I'm already aware of it. And so watching this George Floyd video made me cry strong, long, deep tears. And it's a kind of rehashing a trauma that a lot of people are doing. I guess for me, it's like, I think in terms of like advising people to watch the video, I would say if you are, if you need more information about what the full scope of policing in America could look like, then definitely watch that video. Definitely understand, because a lot of people have a misconception that it's like one of these TV shows and it's all clean and the good guys are doing the good things and the bad guys are doing the bad things and blah, blah, blah. And if you need some clarity, then watch the video. So, but for quite a many number of people, like it's you don't need that education. It's simply a practice of kind of rehashing a trauma. And maybe you don't need to watch the video. So I don't know. I truly believe that, most people with a heart, 99% of the people with a beating heart, are really upset and appalled. And this is an opportunity to see what happens next. See if we can sustain some of this anger into some political action. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
yeah, and I think the next step, right? So if people watch a video like this, but then they say, yeah, that cop, and we now know his name, and Derek Chauvin is how we pronounce it in French, but I think it's like Chauvin is how Chauvin or something, how they pronounce it. Um, something needs to happen to him, and that's true. But I think the some people might think that like he's the problem here, and I think that's part of it. And whatever happens to him determines how the bigger problems are addressed or not moving forward in some ways, right? Like it sets the tone for how these things will be addressed in the future and what other cops can expect in the future for their behavior. And I guess like one of the things that was interesting last night, like one of the most fascinating moments for me was when a lot of the protesters took a knee and were saying to the cops who were in riot gear in front of them, saying, if you are truly with us, if this is one bad cop, and here in Montreal we have, I don't have the exact number for me, but at least a dozen unarmed people that have been killed by police in the last kind of 10 years, I would say, many of them black, and and throughout the day, there was many people, and that's why I said catharsis opening this up, is there was many people taking the opportunity to kind of yell in some ways or tell their story of something that had happened to them individually, to a police officer on a megaphone.
Right.
In situations like this, getting this out is kind of like a Me Too. These are like Me Too moments for a lot of people in the street, I think.
Right.
And so there's a moment where everybody, so if these are one bad cop, if it's one bad cop in the case here in Montreal who killed Nicholas Gibbs or who killed Farshad Mohammadi or whoever might have been, then if you guys are not them, then we're all taking a knee right now. Can you please just take a knee with us for a second and show that you're with us?
Qu'on peut mettre notre genou au sol pour écraser ce système?
Show your difference. You guys are all the fucking same.
No, they're not.
No, they're not. Speak up. No one's speaking up. Speak up. Speak up. Take a knee.
Vous avez vu aux États-Unis?
Take a knee. 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 Take a knee.
Les genoux par terre. Les genoux par terre. Les genoux par terre. Les genoux par terre.
This was attempted numerous times and no cop flinched, right? Like even came close to
Really?
taking a knee. Well, I mean, you expected them to take a knee? The cops?
Well, we have examples of cops taking knees in the United States.
Oh yeah?
Absolutely, yeah. We have footage of, this is what's been so interesting. We've got footage, I wish I could tell you which of the cities, because we've had protests, thankfully, in every state, all 50 states in the United States, but we have footage of cops taking knees, like en masse, in riot gear on a knee. We also have footage of protesters standing in front of small businesses and shops like Target, standing and differentiating themselves from looters.
There is not a police officer over here that thinks Minnesota was justified. We stand with you on that. But this is our city. Our city. Do not let people who are not from this city have you come here and screw up your city.
Not in Montreal.
No, definitely not. And then the cops attacked a little while later, and then that's when the vandalism and the looting started. Was after the tear gas and the beanbag bullets. Yeah.
I think that protest needs to happen, obviously, and I think that the people who are overly focused on rioting and looting and less concerned with the initial crime, the initial murder, the initial catalyst for all this, like, that's a problem.
How did you feel when you saw like police officers kneeling?
I thought it was a brilliant showing of solidarity. It was an important opportunity for them to show that they understand. I have friends who work in the police force in New York City, and I had these conversations with them, and I heard the two friends I'm thinking of, they both spoke through tears on the phone with me and these are black men. It's not enough to take a knee. They know that, and I've explained that to them, and they know that. What needs to happen is justice. All four of the officers in that video, or whoever was in that video, the law enforcement people in that video need to be held accountable. People need to go to jail, need to be tried and then convicted. And then we need to have a serious conversation about policing and about, to me, it seems like one of the problems is like the interpretation of the law for how police officers can apply their force and to what degree they're culpable when something goes wrong, when they apply their force against either the wrong person or they've applied it, and killed someone or harmed someone in an undue fashion. They need to be held accountable. We know that accountability and legal penalties can like prevent future bad action, and so that's to me the obvious solution here, and you'll be surprised, I think, at how many officers kind of get that. And the question is, what does that look like in terms of legal statutes?
Yeah, Yeah, that sounds right. I wonder what it means for all the brutality and violations of people's rights and dignity that happens that isn't filmed moving forward. You know, like how do we address those cases, which are probably more numerous? Like how, and I guess that's a step. It's a step to get justice in the cases that are filmed. That's a step, and maybe that's the step that we're at right now. And it also just touches on a lot of broader questions. One of the other interesting questions I wanted to throw at you that you mentioned is just about riot as a weapon of political change. And I have one of the things that's so interesting is that you talk to different people, and different people have like really, really educated, well-read people will come up with totally contradicting arguments, right? For this stuff, where they'll say like, look at the 60s and all that was achieved through peaceful protest. It's like, man, the United States burned in the 60s too. Like there was like 300 massive riots like in the US in that same period, but it gets told as the history of Martin Luther King and stuff like that. And I'm not putting that, like both these things happened at the same time. So to try and figure out who was responsible for the meager reforms that did happen is really hard. It's really hard to figure out who strengthened whose hand and what force did what, and I haven't seen anybody be able to. I don't see how anybody could, and I haven't seen anybody able to do it to actually like break it down and say, well, these were the tactics that were actually the ones that worked. You know, the best we could say is probably they fed each other, they armed each other in some ways, as long as everybody can keep their eyes on the prize, and on what the real issue is. You know. And I don't know, what do you think about that?
I think that's right. I think if you have if you want to have a fantastical vision of what the 60s was, you could believe that it was just a moment when everybody was involved in some political action, and that's not true. And that it was all peaceful, or that the majority of it had to do with boycotts and sit-ins. That's not true either. And the two iconic names of that era, Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, are held up as like foils against each other. You know, I know they actually had periods when they were overtly hostile to each other, but they also recognized the value that each brought to the movement, and they had different roles to play, and they, like you said, fed each other. Mm-hmm. What I find interesting is in this moment, look, a riot is an important part of political activity, but it's also a blunt instrument. Talk about a blunt instrument. It doesn't necessarily lead to the best outcomes, and necessarily what's needed is the next step. And I think it's important to ask for that, and I think it's important that we allow the moment to be what it is, and we make these systems uncomfortable because they deserve to be, because they've neglected these conversations, they've neglected the outcry. Meaning, in other words, when LeBron James puts on a shirt and says, "I can't breathe," they told him not to wear that. When someone goes to the Grammys and makes a speech about police brutality, they said that that's not the place either. They told Colin Kaepernick not to take a knee. And so those were peaceful. And then you continue to delay the changes that are necessary structurally, and so this is what happens. But so for instance, Killer Mike in Atlanta made a strong claim, I thought, to say, yo, Atlanta, there's a black business community in Atlanta, creative business community that's been built over decades, and we should be mindful about how we engage with that, even as we protest. And in Minneapolis and in every city, I think it's useful to consider how to refine the tools being used, and to be more deliberate, and to be sure that we can, to be sure that there's something to build afterward. There's something productive to be built afterward. That is key. I mean, that if you don't do that, you're compounding the tragedy in some ways, if you ask me.
Yeah, like a riot can only say what you don't want. Like as an instrument, it can only say, this thing that happened, I didn't like it. I'm not liking this. Like they can only reject things, they can't propose things as a tool, right? So like you're definitely going to need some vehicle or multiple vehicles that are going to propose things, what to replace it with, right? And so that's one thing. The other thing that that as you're talking about is in some ways I feel like the same way I feel about one of the tragedies of drugs being illegal, yet still like people still having access to them, is that there's so few places like in the mainstream or popular place where you can go to actually find out how to responsibly use drugs, right? So you end up with a lot of irresponsible use of drugs because people don't know how to use them, but they have access to them. And so it's like, where do you go to find out where do people get an idea of like responsible rioting? So in the sense of like thinking about like a conscientious thinking about, okay, who are the potential victims of this looting or this rioting or of this window? Like if I have to smash a window, which one? It's like, and because if you smash up a Target, the victims are few. It's all that stuff's insured. These guys are getting billions of dollars in bailouts anyways. They're owned by hedge funds. Ultimately, it's almost like a make work thing. It's the local person who replaces glass is going to have more work. It's like, and the person who's got to clean it up. It's like it's almost like a jobs program. Whereas if you smash up the family-owned place or the 30 employee business, or in some really sad cases we saw there was like a community center, basically community-run center that was smashed up in Minneapolis, where people used to get workshops on the indigenous history of the area and things like that. Like that got burnt to the ground.
I think that's key. And you're right. Where do you go for that? We don't have anyone. I don't.
If we're gonna be real about this, if people are gonna talk about if we're gonna talk about rioting as a legitimate political tool, it's like, well, let's get into that.
I found it incredible today to see footage of Black activists standing in front of stores, arms locked, telling looters, people who seem to be there only for the destructive element of this, and saying, look, there's a difference between me and you. I'm here for this movement. I'm here for George Floyd. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to ask that you're here for George Floyd as well. This action in and of itself, if you're only excited by this part of the movement and not excited by understanding the historical relevance of policing and Black bodies being tormented, then we aren't the same. That kind of nuance is important. And I respect that, and I think there's a difference, and I think we can get swapped up. We can get kind of swept up, particularly when you've got elements on the right, including the president, also lacking nuance and just kind of like being opposed to this kind of political action. Generally, it's easy for us to all sort of defend aggressive political action and riots, and I defend it. I see it as a legitimate form of political activization. If that's a word, activization. But there are differences that are worth pointing out, and it's very important to have our incentives set up correctly, where we don't incentivize just wanton taking advantage of a bad situation, which I think a minority of people are doing. But most people are engaged in this, and I hope that they'll continue to sort of use to offer their time and their energies for these organizations that have been doing the work for criminal justice and the important work in this country. So, Jesse, we are in episode 5. And for this one, bro, I chose a real barn burner, a real celebrity right now. She's on everything all over the radio. The talented, the sexy, the amusing, and sometimes unpredictable Cardi B. I love Cardi B. I like Cardi B a lot. I don't know her obviously, but I like her. And she's a rags to riches story. She's an underdog, huge fun personality, and I'm a big fan. And she's from the Bronx. She's from the Bronx, New York. So we're essentially cousins. I'm gonna try to affiliate myself with her the way you do with what's that billionaire guy? What's his name?
Chamath.
You're like, yeah, we're both
Polyapatia, yeah. Ottawa, baby.
Yeah. Cardi B was born Belcalis Marlenis Almanzar. And I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but what's funny, there's a video of her challenging the pronunciation of her own name.
So who's saying the right out of both my parents? Because my dad be like, Becali. And then my mom be like, Becalis. So how am I supposed to know somebody else's name without even knowing how to say my own motherfucking name?
She was raised in the South Bronx. She began stripping. She began being a dancer at the age of 19. And she says she did it as a form of financial freedom for herself and as a way to get out of an abusive relationship. It was around 2013 that she started to kind of get into some popularity with Vine and Instagram, the social media platforms. And so around 2015, she was, after 2 years of this consistent stuff, she was kind of a known quantity, sort of a mini celebrity online, an influencer for sure. I think in 2015 she reached about 1 million followers on Instagram, and then eventually she got noticed by the right people and joined the cast of the VH1 reality show Love and Hip Hop. That eventually led to some collabs on some music, and then she released her first mixtape, which was Gangsta Bitch Music Volume 1, and she blew up from there.
Look like a cute bum bitch, a cute dusty little bum bitch.
I have a homegirl and she makes $10 an hour in her job. She has a baby. She don't qualify for food stamp because supposedly she makes too much money. But yes, she can't find a place to live because, rent in New York City is too much. And what I'm saying is, do you have to have 4 kids and make $2 an hour so you could qualify for goddamn food stamps? And like my manager been having me take media training class to talk to the media for these interviews. And you know what? I be on some fuck that shit because I want to talk and the level that people could relate to me. Like, I don't give a fuck if y'all don't like me or not. I'm not gonna be fake.
I know a lot of bitches that don't care much to get their ass eaten out. I personally really don't enjoy it, but we just like to get our ass eaten out to brag about it. Like, just in case a nigga try to play us, we be like, yeah, well, he still ate my ass though. So
people be talking like strippers don't be working hard and shit, like if that's just some easy job. But your bitch can't even walk a whole entire block with heels on, and we be fucking doing splits, somersaults for hours in them shits. For hours.
Hey y'all, I'm Cardi B, and I'm here to tell you that if you're on your period, let your man fuck you in your ass. Like when I was younger, I never understood how some of my friends or some of the people around me used to be like, oh, like, my mom let my boyfriend sleep in my house today. And it's like, ain't you 14 years old? I don't get it. When I told my mom I'm stripped and I was a grown-ass woman, she threw me down the staircase. My point exactly is, I think sometimes you should just whip your kids' ass from time to time. Trust me, they ain't gonna hate you forever. When they grown and whatnot, they gonna understand and whatever. Look at these white folks. They don't be whipping their kids' ass. And who killed them? They kids. Exactly.
When these celebrities try to commit suicide, try to kill themselves, overdose, you wonder like, damn, why somebody that got so much money want to die and shit? Because y'all motherfuckers and y'all grimy ass opinions always trying to put people down and shit. Like, your father should have nutted inside your mother's asshole. Y'all niggas is the... Yes, I exposed my titties before. Yes, I showed my ass before for some motherfucking money. Because a bitch like me without no college degree in New York City could get no job that's gonna pay her more than $260 a week. That's why you little bitches gotta stay in motherfucking school. Cause shit gets real.
Hey y'all, so today I was dumb hyped because I reached 1 million followers. Then I realized, wait a minute, why am I hyped for? I still don't got $1 million. And I still owe 2 months of rent. Oh, nah, this ain't right. But, I'm still thankful, though,
So that's Cardi, man. Cardi's
Yeah.
crazy. And what's funny is that I followed her way back then when she was less of a known quantity because somebody forwarded one of those videos to me and I was like, who is this, She was just a big personality. By night, she was a stripper, and by day, she was running a media organization, an improv comedy show. You know, a one-person improv comedy show, doing comedic improv and commentary, and just blew up off that. And I just think that's incredible.
I mean, it is. I guess it's like a really modern success story. A lot of our biggest artists, I guess, get discovered this way, and then they kind of like become performers like in their particular musical genres later. But the same thing is still what sells in her music, right? Like, I mean, what I get from her music, what I find attractive in her music isn't so much the musical talent, the things I would typically look for in a musical act. It's like, well, I guess it's all part of it. It's attitude, right? It's like, it's this attitude. It's just so, there's so much attitude in it, and it's the same attitude that you saw in every one of those videos that was in that compilation. And I don't know what you call that. I don't know what, beyond attitude.
We call that swag.
Swag.
But it's a certain kind of swag, though. You know, it's a certain kind of swag, and it's a certain kind of swag that not everyone has, and that sadly, and this is what I'm going to jump into now, is, you know, when a woman has this kind of swag, she opens herself up to a certain kind of criticism. And so Cardi has been hit with a ton of what we call today slut shaming. You know, Cardi came up at a time when there were certain prominent cultural movements happening. The Me Too movement is one of them, and one feature, I guess it's one branch of sort of the modern feminist movements, includes a sexual liberation, which Cardi does. Cardi is vulgar. Cardi talks about sex. She talks about how much she enjoys it. She was a sex worker, I think it's fair to say, and she represents a movement that says, sex work is legitimate, and she's not here to be talked down to or demeaned in any way for that.
Yeah, definitely one of the things that I get from her is, much like Michael Jordan, who we talked about in our last episode, is that she's at her best. She performs best when responding to haters. It's like that's the source of her energy. And if she can get slighted in some way, if somebody can criticize her in some way that she doesn't think is legit, then that's her oil. That's where she gets her power. And she's powerful. She's powerful.
Oh, she's a beast, man. She can talk some shit, and she can shut you down for whatever your critique is. And she's sexy, and she knows it. And her time as a sex worker has refined her understanding of her own sexuality and what, you know, her target audience likes. And have you seen the twerk video?
No.
All right, the twerk video is nuts, man. I mean, in this video, you've got dozens of beautiful women shaking their ass and twerking and looking sexy and doing a thing. And I'm not mad at the video at all. But, you know, she's been open to some serious criticism from just people generally and from feminists who define themselves differently in terms of their understanding of feminism. She said that she's been accused of playing the misogynist's game by objectifying women's bodies, and she's responded.
You believe in equal rights with men and women, that makes you a feminist. I don't understand how you bitches feel like being a feminist is a woman, they have an education, they have a degree. That is not being a feminist. You discouraging a certain type of woman, that definitely doesn't make you one. And some bitches want to act like, oh, you have to read a book about feminism. No, you do not. There's only a definition for a simple word. The problem is that being a feminist is something so great, and y'all don't want me to be great. But too bad, because at the end of the day, I'm gonna encourage any type of woman. You don't have to be a woman like me for me to encourage and support you and tell you, yes, bitch, keep on going. And that's why you fucking mad, you little dusty ass bitch.
That's Cardi, fam. What do you think of her definition of feminism?
I mean, I there's things I like about it. I think this is just like one of the pros and cons of having like a word to define a movement is then it becomes this thing. Are you in or out? And then instead of just like having like a good discussion around the things that the criticisms people actually have over like what the actual impacts of that video are, we becomes a conversation about what whether or not she's a feminist, you know, and which is like a much less interesting conversation to me. Like I don't really care whether or not like somebody thinks she is or isn't a feminist. I think I think it's interesting and powerful that she defines herself as a feminist, because I like that word to get out there, because then people get interested in like what it means, and they like learn about all these various different critiques of our society that come under the banner of feminism, which are very powerful. And I think a lot of us have a lot to gain from getting into. So I like the idea that it gets the word further out there, that she takes it on. She's like, I am this thing. But I just don't care about the discussion about whether or not she's a feminist, you know?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you can't have that conversation until you have the first conversation, which is to define feminism.
Which there's
and her definite.
That's a whole thing. Like that thousands, millions of academics are involved in and trying to figure out. And anyway, sorry, go ahead.
It's a whole thing. Yeah. No, it's a whole thing. I mean, but there's a history. There is a history, and you know, there are movements that have existed in the past, and have, you know, we rest on those shoulders of the people who did that work, and today's feminism is sometimes considered a third wave of feminism, and it includes ownership of a woman's sexuality, and so Cardi represents easily. She sits in this category of feminism that wants to redefine words like slut and hoe, and to say, those words aren't injurious to me, and in fact, I get to control. So it also empowers sex workers to say, sex work is legitimate, and I have an asset in my body that I can choose to do whatever I want with and capitalize on. And Cardi right now is probably one of the most like prominent spokespeople for this position. I think it's interesting. I don't know if she signed up. I don't know if she was like deliberately trying to be a feminist model or anything like that, but I think she's just constantly speaking honestly and just being clear about who she is and what she wants.
Does she have a take on like when male artists in their videos just surround themselves with like almost naked women who are paid to be there? Has Cardi ever kind of like, do you know about that? She's spoken on those things. Is she cool with that?
I wonder. I don't know what she would say to that. I think she sees it as
because I imagine that the people that are criticizing her would be saying something along the lines of like, that same image that was did harm when it was a male artist that was the one eventually making the money off the video, or who was the kind of face of the video, that there's no difference between your video and those videos at some level in terms of that image. I guess is maybe what their argument would be. But I think there is a difference.
I think it's an interesting argument, and I think it's one worth having. And I think it's one. Now we're two cisgendered men, and maybe we're not best equipped for this conversation. This is a conversation that women have to have and are having about their liberation. And I think for me, some of the nuance is important. So I think if a woman says exactly what you said, that this music video, the twerk video, for instance, is indistinguishable from some of the misogynist, masculine, male-oriented videos, I don't see how that's not there's validity in that as well, as far as I'm concerned. There's something there. I hope that Cardi and others can have that conversation with with those detractors and figure it out, you know?
There's actually a shot in that video that reminded me of the Thong Song video, like where it kind of like camera on the dolly going past all the butts. But I was.
And who doesn't love some butts, man? Yo, who doesn't love it? Yo, you know. But like, it's a question. Like, so Cardi would say, "Yo, at least I'm owning that. It's me as opposed to some other guy." Now, obviously, there's a label and so clearly there's some white guy at the top somewhere. But you know, Cardi gets to inject herself and extract, you know, as much as she can from the commerce of this, and there's some value to that.
And also, like twerking is like a pretty impressive dance. Like there's some real art there in twerking. You know, like it takes practice and it's hard to do. And
if you do it well, I've seen some people do it poorly. I'm one of those. I can't twerk.
Like all art forms, man. Like all art forms.
Yeah.
You know? It's like that's how you know it's an art form. If somebody's doing it poorly, that's how you know it takes practice.
Real talk.
But the thing I would say about this is like in terms of a broader politics I see with her is that she's just anti-hater, and she has anti-hater politics. She has she has anti-judgment politics. And I saw this from her when she came to the defense, I guess we'll call it, of Zaya Wade, I don't know how she pronounced it, but the trans daughter of Dwayne Wade and Gabrielle Union. When at 12 years of age, they publicized the fact that their daughter was transitioning from young boy to young woman, and caught a lot of flack about that. And Cardi B came to their defense, like, get the fuck off. You can't judge people like this. Like, you don't know her reality. You don't know, what she's going through. And basically saying, I know not everybody has been exposed to people of, some of us aren't from neighborhoods or from communities or families or whatever, where we're exposed to a lot of people with different like sexual and gender diverse identities and stuff like that. And so our immediate thing is to judge. And she's like, I understand that, but please just take some time to try to understand this, read something, whatever. And I really appreciated that anti-hater, anti-judgment politics. It was it's a nice place. Is it consistent though? Is she a hater? Does she hate on people?
No, I think Cardi, I mean, you're describing a kind of a libertarian politics in some ways. Like
really?
Total yeah, right? Do you agree with me?
I guess it's in some way
individual rights, like I am who I am. The government should stay out of my business, and so should, other people. Like I'm just
on that front, like
freely.
On freedom of expression, freedom to be who you want to be. Maybe we're going to get into this in a bit, but she's definitely not libertarian in terms of economic policy, and she thinks the government should be playing a role in giving people what they need so that they can focus on other things, not having.
Exactly.
Anyways, we're going to get into that later, I know.
We definitely will. Yeah, and so anti-hater is one way to characterize it. I think she's bedfellows with like Amber Rose and the slut walk. You familiar with the slut walk, Jess?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course.
We're taking back the word slut. Nobody can tell us what to do. We own our own bodies. It's up to us.
We wanted to be surrounded just by complete body positivity. No shaming, no slut shaming.
A lot of people are blind to the fact that women aren't being treated equally, and that's a big problem.
To wear what you want to wear because you're comfortable in your own skin. Gold digger, hoe, scammer, slut, bitch, fat bitch, diet, all of that.
What makes this year's slut walk different from the previous two? I think people are more aware because I didn't shut up about it and I threw my bush in everyone's face, and I just kind of didn't stop for feminism,
Slut walk actually started out by you, bro. Started in Toronto.
Toronto, yep, absolutely. I know some of the people that were in the first slut walk. I was in Honduras when slut walk took off, and I filmed the first slut walk in Tegucigalpa in Honduras. That was pretty impressive. You want to talk about a place where that was pushing things. It's like a very, very conservative place to be doing a slut walk. And it was an impressive time.
The international phenomenon known as slut walk has now reached the Honduran capital of Tegucigalpa. Slut walk began on April 3rd in Toronto, Canada, when 3,000 people marched to Toronto Police headquarters to protest a constable's advice to a university security conference that, quote, women should avoid dressing like sluts in order not to be victimized. In just over 2 months, slut walks have been organized in at least 80 cities representing every continent on the globe.
It's a way of saying to people, like, get used to seeing me out here and not saying anything, you know, and shutting up, like dressing however I want to dress. That's how I took it too. And I think it's interesting because, you know, I think some of these ideas around what's vulgar and what's not allowed and things like that came out of an idea that, you know, there's parts of human life and civic life and stuff like that where we need as a society to make moves to not be distracted by our sexual thoughts. You know, like when you're in the office, it's time to do work. When you're in a courtroom, it's like time to figure out if the person's guilty or not. And so everybody needs to refrain from wearing things that will distract other people and things like this. And I guess there's some validity to that, but it's like at the same time that same society has been telling women that their only value is in terms of, you know, being sexy and being able to attract a man and stuff like that. So then it's like, this is how you telling me to express stuff, and you're saying shouldn't do it in this place and so there's like a certain amount of control that comes from that, and also just men's fashion, I guess, hasn't been as skin showing typically. Now we're seeing a lot more tighter pants, things like that. So it'd be interesting to see if what happens in the future. But I think it's like it's a rebellion against this feeling of control, which is totally legitimate. Totally legitimate.
And so, are you familiar with OnlyFans, Jesse?
I've heard about it. I have never been on the platform myself.
Oh, you don't have to lie, Jesse. You don't have to lie. This is a.
I don't have to lie.
Judgment-free podcast. No, I'm just kidding. Yo, so
OnlyFans, no haters. OnlyFans, no haters.
That's right. OnlyFans is a social platform in which, you know, people can sell videos and photos and live streams, and there's a monthly membership system behind a paywall, and it's available to anybody. So it could be like YouTube, but it really has found a niche with adult entertainers. And in the age of COVID-19, it seems like OnlyFans has blown up. There's a 75% increase in signups on OnlyFans. The website reports 170,000 new users each day. And so that's a lot of young men and women. I don't know the demographics exactly. I don't know how many of these are women to men, but a lot of new people saying, yo, this is a platform that I could gain a following and make some money, particularly as there's so much insecurity in the mainstream job market, whatever they were doing before coronavirus hit. But I don't know if you've noticed it on my
it's something you can do from home, I guess, too. So
something you can do from home. But there's been some backlash, man. There's a lot of people, you know, being critical of, again, particularly the women. I think, again, I don't know the demographics, but I'm imagining it leans a little bit more towards new female members. I should verify that before I say that, but I think that's the case. And there's all this backlash. There's all this like slut shaming backlash about what it means to have an OnlyFans account, and it kind of blows my mind, man, because, you know, I would totally expect that 10 years ago, but it's 2020. Tinder is a thing. People are hooking up, sexting. You know, non-monogamy has sort of become an acceptable way of being, or I don't know if it has become, but it's certainly like asserted itself as a legitimate alternative to monogamy. And yet young women engaged in virtual sex work are being criticized, including people like Cardi B. How does this like anti-sex work thing sustain itself in a climate where sexting and sex positivity is actually at its peak, that it's, you know, in a greater way than it's ever been?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this question of like where the lines are and how you should be able to make money with sex and how you shouldn't be and blah blah is just like one of those culture debates that will forever be with humanity in some form or another. It's just going to shift it's going to go one way or the other. It's going to shift, it's going to slide around. But I in my study of history, like I don't know a time or place where this wasn't like an ongoing debate. This whole question of using sex to make money, whether it's ethical or not, for me seems like I mean, if you're gonna fight that fight, go for it. But like, no society's ever eliminated it.
Right.
So, I pick other fights. I'm not interested in that fight. But I think people need to be aware of it. I think people need to be really aware that it is used to make money. And if you were actually wanted to be effective about it, then you would probably want to lobby for, if you actually feel like this is like a horrible thing, and which I guess I can understand that argument, particularly when people are doing it not because there's something they want to do, but it's because something they feel they have no other options. Well, then you should be fighting for them to have other options. You know, if that's the situation you're trying to save people from, not by eliminating that thing they see as their only option left.
Right. And Cardi's been really transparent about that. Like her whole thing, she in some ways glamorizes sex work, and in other ways she's pretty clear that it was a last resort for her. It was that or on the streets.
Yeah.
So.
And she's somebody who appears to have been able to do it in a way that she felt like was on her terms, it seems like. And yeah, and that she even got some enjoyment out of it sounds like.
Part of what hip hop does is I think it embraces some of these darker, you know, poverty-stricken, like the idea of having to do what you have to do. And so like there's a glorification of hustling, drug sales, potential murders, robbery, fraud, scams, whatever we had to do because these systems fail us. And when the men do it, it's fun and we glorify it, and Jay-Z's a cool guy. I fuck with Jay-Z. I think he's the greatest rapper of all time, but his stuff is laced with all that, you know. It's particularly his, you know, Reasonable Doubt, that kind of stuff. That's all that. It's like whatever asset, however he assesses himself in the marketplace for, you know, how to make money, he just injects himself and starts to make it happen. And we don't critique it. We don't say he shouldn't have done that. But Cardi has to suffer this criticism, and it's certainly not fair. So let's jump into a quick video about showing Cardi's evolution a little bit. Cardi has now, in present day, Cardi is more than just a former dancer, more than just a rapper. I mean, she's a legit entertainer. She's a producer and a TV producer. She was, you know, co-producer on a Netflix special called Rhythm and Flow. It was a competition where they found talented music artists in different parts of the country.
I'm expecting to get pregnant by one of these records. That verse definitely gave me trust issues. I don't trust y'all, man. Y'all just, you know what? Put me some real. Literally hanging by a vagina hair. You know that little hair on your lips that you didn't get to? You're that hair. Yeah. Take my panties off. You smoke weed, don't you? You do. There's a lot of competition. And I understand what's wrong with hummus. I like hummus.
Chance? Yeah.
I was blind. I couldn't even believe you rap like that. You know what I'm saying? You look like you built computers, but you did good. I'm selling boobs, I'm selling ass and everything.
Well, the way that Flawless came up there like a male stripper that works
He was selling that shit, wasn't
he looked like he was gonna come in there with a pizza box without the pizza in it.
I love those clips because it's showing a woman who is now in a different, just a different climate. You know, she's flanked by T.I. and Chance the Rapper, and she's holding her own, and is also the same girl. She's still Cardi from the block. She's saying the same stuff. She speaks in the same tone and cadence and with the same raw, sort of vulgar sexuality, but she's handling stuff, man. She's a hard-working woman, man. She's out here putting out music and also putting out other video content. There was another thing. She was a host of, was it an award show? I can't remember which one, but I was impressed by her stage presence. She has the skills of a stand-up comic as well. And I just think she has in front of her, her future is pretty bright. She can do pretty much whatever she wants.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like these are roles that being an Instagram person first or a Vine person first, and having that pressure to deliver off the cuff every day, multiple times a day, making content multiple times a day. This is like a skill that she's developed, so that she's ready to rock in the moment. She has that and a natural improbability, and she's funny. She's definitely funny, and her creativity, like the way she presents herself and all stuff. It also reminds me of those figures when I was growing up that were like a dose of weird into the mainstream, like a Missy Elliott or Outkast. Or even like Busta Rhymes, his videos, I remember, they would just be aesthetically crazy.
Yeah.
There would just be so much happening, so many colors. And that's like making space for other people, at a lot of local level to express themselves, to wear funny things, whatever it might be, to not just all look the same.
She's savvy with the context of understanding her particular assets. You know, she understands that her sexuality is part of her selling point, and she should have the right to capitalize on that. Like, I don't know of another industry where we tell people to limit themselves based on some vague, absurd moral standard. So why should this woman have to do that? And she's like, I don't give a fuck. I do what I want, and this is what I'm gonna do. And people love her for it. Women for sure love her for it. I think the men should love her for those reasons as well.
Yeah, I mean, as an artist, like the music I want to listen to, at least when I'm at home, not like out drinking or whatever. I prefer Chance the Rapper, for example, who's the co-host on there. But when I watch the trailer for Hustle and Flow, I don't think there's a single Chance the Rapper clip in the trailer.
Yeah.
It's like basically Cardi B from beginning to end with a little bit from the contestants in between.
If you watch the whole thing, which is actually worth watching,
I said Hustle and Flow, I meant Rhythm and Flow.
Rhythm and Flow, right?
That's another great film. Another great film. By the way, you were the one that introduced me to Chance the Rapper. Like, he had one video out. It was that like slow ballad with the singer in the car. And this is like years ago. So you were telling me you were early on Cardi B when she was just like an Instagram person. You were also real early on Chance the Rapper.
Yeah.
Like, you're doing well, Billy.
Well, I've got that.
You're a bit of a talent scout, bro.
Chance he just had a different sound. He was fantastic early on. I loved his positivity. Obviously he has a religious angle to his music, which is great. But you'll see that in these clips, Cardi is just saying all kinds of things about her vagina, and you see Chance go, "Oh no," and
Yeah.
It's really interesting to watch, you know. Chance is like, oh, don't say those words, and Cardi's like, yo, I believe in saying whatever comes to my mind, you know. And it works for both of them, so it's pretty solid. So yeah, so you got this girl from the Bronx, Cardi, who has all this charisma and energy, and when she comes into prominence as a famous figure, she says, I'm gonna use my voice in politics. And she sees her political outlet through Bernie Sanders. It's a pretty interesting story. Apparently, when Bernie Sanders was running for president in 2016, she tweeted out, "Vote for Daddy Bernie, bitch," and she said that in her video. And then in 2018, she told GQ that Franklin Roosevelt was the real Make America Great Again, because if it wasn't for him, old people wouldn't get Social Security. The Sanders campaign caught on that she was, you know, she had some socialist tendencies, and said shit. And, you know, they jumped on and said, Cardi B is right. If we are really going to make America great, we need to strengthen Social Security. And then they recorded videos together.
The last time I got on live, I had a fit because I was so hurt and upset that you dropped out of the race and everything. And I was really upset because I keep telling the youth and I keep telling my people and my supporters, like, it's like, you guys really have to go and vote. And now we are you know, now we're stuck between 45. We don't name them over here. You know what I'm saying? We ain't gonna name them over here. So now we have 45 and Joe Biden. And you know, I'm just gonna go with Joe Biden because I cannot see the next step of America being ran by number 45. Like, I think, and I don't know, you told me, I think we are going to enter like a recession right now, even though we are going through this coronavirus crisis. You know, people are still running, and I heard that you are endorsing now Joe Biden. I will want you to tell my platform, why are you endorsing him? Like, why should we vote for him?
First point is that when I announced that I was running for president, and there were like 18 people running, you know, what I said is, if I don't win, tried hard to win, I will endorse the Democrat who wins, because Donald Trump is, to my mind, the most dangerous president in the modern history of America.
Super logical. I mean, if she, you know, as we saw in the earlier Instagram videos, said as she was getting famous, and said, there's a lot of pressure on me to change as I get rich and go Hollywood, or however she put it. And she said, I'm not going to change. Well, this is logical then. If you're not going to change, if you're going to stay in touch with the needs of the community you came from, then obviously a progressive candidate, in my opinion, somebody who's going to support something like $15 an hour, somebody who's going to support free healthcare for everybody, free education for everybody, then that's clearly in the best interest of your community. And so it's logical, but it's also brave, because as we talked about with Michael Jordan, when you're a brand, when you're selling things, taking political positions, strong political positions, not like taking controversial political positions, like supporting a socialist candidate, can split your fan base. You run the risk of splitting your fan base. So it's, while it's logical for her to support him, it's brave for her to do it, and to put that ahead of what would potentially be her economic interest, which would be to not split her fan base like that. The other thing I would note too is these things are really painful usually to watch when candidates get together with artists for these videos. Like Bernie is really painful to watch, actually. Like, I remember the one with his real name's coming to me, Michael Render, but Killer Mike.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
With Killer Mike, and Killer Mike explains his reasons for supporting Bernie, and then shows like a real understanding of the issues in the history of racism and class struggle in the U.S. And then Bernie goes, yeah, and starts to tell him all about the history of Martin Luther King and the Poor People's Campaign. And it's like, and so instead of having a discussion, it was like Bernie teaching this guy who's from Atlanta, like, you know, where Martin Luther King, you know, was the preacher at the church, right? You know, and it was just like, it's just so painful to watch, because it could have been a real discussion between two minds,
right,
trying to figure out what's next for America, but it didn't feel that way at all. But this one, like, but it's often, and I remember the Mary J. Blige one with Hillary Clinton, which is just like, it was like a Saturday Night Live skit, like, in and of itself. It was just so, Hillary Clinton's so uncomfortable, Mary J. Blige is looks so just the whole dynamic was so ridiculous. But Cardi B is like one of the only people I've seen one of these things that comes across really like she's being herself.
Because she is being herself, bro. That is,
I really felt like she was being herself.
Yeah, she can't help it. I mean, and again, I think one of the recurring themes in several of our podcasts is that notion of being yourself, and then also striving to be your better self, you know, I guess. And Cardi represents that, and she continues to. So obviously we are in this moment, June 1st, we're not only dealing with, you know, several months into a coronavirus epidemic, but we've been mired with new videos of another police officer killing another innocent man in the street in cold blood. And this time, not just with, obviously it's never good, but it's not just some moment of a gun firing. This was slow, deliberate, disgusting, watching a man have the life sucked out of him with a callous knee on his
execution.
neck.
Yeah,
you know,
8-minute execution.
8-minute execution with people screaming and saying, "Hey, you're killing this man! Stop!" You know, there's people, you know, trying to compel this man to do something different than what he was doing, and he did nothing. And his police officer compadres, the partners, all did nothing as well.
So I just want to give my POV. Seeing people looting and going extremely outraged, you know, it makes me feel like, yes, finally, motherfuckers is gonna hear us now, yeah. And as much as people is so against it, at this point, I feel like I'm not against it, even though it do scare me, and I don't want anybody to get hurt. But it's really frustrating. You wanna know why? Because police brutality been going on even way before I was born. But it has been more visual ever since, you know, social media started getting popping. And ever since, let's say, Instagram started, just one app. Let's say since Instagram started, how many peaceful protests have we seen? How many trending hashtags have we seen? These hashtags keep freaking repeating themselves. I feel like I've done videos against police brutality. I feel like this is like my 7th time. Like, I've been doing fucking police brutality videos ever since my teeth been fucked up, and the only shit that changed has been my fucking teeth. Like, you know what I'm saying? So it's like people are tired. So now they're tired of showing that it's like, oh, motherfuckers are educated. Motherfuckers could take the grown and adult way and act peaceful. People are tired of that. So now this is what people have to resort to. And another thing, I also want to say this. Another way for the people to take power, I don't want to make everything political, but it is what it is. It's by voting. And when I say voting, I'm not only talking about the president. We could vote for mayors, we could vote for judges, and we could also vote for DAs, district attorneys. Yes, we could vote for these people for our county. We sure can.
She doesn't have to say any of that. And we see so many celebrities not saying any of that or attempting it. Her political activism is deliberate, it's conspicuous, and she deserves credit for that. And you can, you know, lever your critiques in all these other spaces, the way she, I don't know, uses her body, I suppose, is one of the biggest ways that people try to critique her. But this is a woman who is so much more than that.
Yeah, I really appreciate what she's saying here too. I feel like I'm in a similar position in the sense that, like, I've gone through periods of my life where I've been like, forget voting. Voting doesn't change anything. Like, it's time to riot, you know? And then I've been in other periods where I've been like, rioting doesn't do anything. It just destroys buildings and it doesn't change anything. We need to get organized and vote. And now I feel like I'm in a place like where she is, where I'm like, I don't know what works. Let's try it all. And let's just encourage people that feel passionate about whichever, as long as I'll judge people more on their motivations and their values than I will on their tactics. And if they're with me in motivation and value and whatever tactic they think works for them, go for it. And that's what I see in this video. In the same video, she basically says like, yeah, like I was happy to see these riots. It made me feel like we're gonna be heard finally. I'm sick of doing these peaceful Instagram campaigns. At the same time, let's not forget to vote, because riots can only say what we're against, and it's hard to say what you're for with a riot, and hard to put forward a different vision with a riot.
Absolutely. I think we're watching. We are all invested in this project, you know, and once we can admit that, we can have a conversation. A lot of the dichotomies of black versus white are thrown out of the window in this one. White people are overwhelmingly, in my view, in my experience, overwhelmingly appalled by this as well. Now it's a question of, you know, how they act in their anger. The question of police versus the people, even on this, you know, as there are, like I said, in the United States at least, footage of police officers expressing their distaste and taking knees and walking with the protesters. That's also not enough. It's part of the equation, but it's not enough. This is a more nuanced conversation.
I'm just hoping that, like, if she says this is her 7th time around of doing these campaigns on Instagram or whatever it might be, maybe I'm hoping the next one, like, she links to like an activist handbook. Like, here, you know, I've seen a lot of these lists going around, like, here's 75 things you can do to join the fight. Because at this point it's like, what can you do? Like, share this video and I think people need to be given some ideas and encouraged to get creative about how to use their influence where they are in these fights. And it would be cool to see people like Cardi B go in there. And if she doesn't go there, I'm not gonna like hate her for that. I'm just saying that would be a cool thing to see in terms of next steps for an artist like this.
Without a doubt, she's someone who's capable of evolution and a self-critique, and she's trying to figure out, you know, how to use her relatively newfound, you know, status to influence change. We're gonna watch Cardi B attempt several things. Right now, she's engaging with Bernie Sanders, and I don't know if Bernie's gonna run again. I'm you know, he's an old man. I don't think it's gonna happen anymore 4 years from now. But I think we'll see what she does and what she learns from these experiences with Bernie and from these riots and from all the political hits that are likely to befall us all. But I don't think she's gonna recede and be a wallflower or think the moment is too big, or she can't use her influence productively. She's not built that way. She's built to say, yo, I'm here. And I fuck with that.
Yeah, and the more she goes, it seems like, as somebody who gets her energy from haters, like, the more she wades into the political world, the more she's just gonna get political haters. And that's just gonna, from what I see from her, that's just gonna fuel her and push her further and further in that direction. And she'll get more and more creative in that world as a way to show up those people.
Yeah. I think, you know, with the haters thing, I'm all for the anti-hater politics generally. I hope, as you mentioned, what you would hope potentially she, you know, could come from Cardi. I hope the whole concept of a hater is interesting to me. I hope we can get to a more nuanced conversation where, like, if someone doesn't like something, they're not necessarily a hater. You know what I mean? And I think Cardi has mastered. You mentioned her ability to, like, craft a headline for easy consumption for BuzzFeed or whomever else. She's really good at, you levy a critique at her, she shuts the conversation down. You ain't shit. You know what I mean? Like, she says whatever and the conversation's over. And I think eventually she'll see power in the idea that the conversation has to continue, even if it's with someone who has an undue distaste for something and someone who's wrong objectively. Engage with them. Don't necessarily shut it down like they have no room to speak. No, people deserve their room to be wrong or to have their opinion. And that's what I'm hoping for generally, is just better conversations. And she has a kind of style about her that can shut a conversation down after she's done saying what she has to say.
And I think it's hard to imagine somebody in that world being able to stay on top while embracing the kind of dialogue, respecting of all voices kind of thing that you're describing, right? Like, she would be somebody totally different. She would not be the person that her fans have appreciate, I guess, or that like get entertainment out of. And so it might be the fastest way to like lose her off the stage, Yeah. So I think that's a hard thing to hope for. But also we shouldn't be, like Dave Chappelle always says, we shouldn't be looking to our celebrities to hold the entire political space, or to be the place where we go to get all our information on what to think about what's going on in the world. So we don't need that. We don't need a musician to do that. We need them to be real and to be in solidarity.
That's exactly right. And that's a good place to end it, my friend. Jesse, thanks so much for episode 5 with Cardi B. I think we covered some good ground here. And obviously this is a real rough moment for everyone and all the listeners. I hope we traversed all these topics with some care and we were able to shed some light.
I hope as well, man. I love you. Much love.
Much love, Jess. Peace.